We studied the first part of the third principal part in chapter 16 with the first aorist. We're returning to our table that I introduced in chapter 15, our overview of the indicative verb system. So thus far we've seen principal parts 1 and 2, and so you see that the first aorist is a part of principal part number 3. We see that we will encounter an augment like we did for the imperfect in principal part number 1. Still no reduplication. Of course we have the verb stem, we call it the first aorist. Just like with the future, we have a verb suffix, a stem suffix. In this case, it's the sigma alpha suffix. No thematic vowel, because the alpha will kind of fulfill that role. And for the endings, we will have secondary endings. Once again, only active and middle endings. The passive will be formed on a different stem all the way in principal part number 6. There you see it, the aorist. See, it has a whole different tense suffix and therefore has its own passive. So when we look at that, we see here a different way to denote that. The first aorist tense morphology with an augment, box number 1, box number 3, your tense stem, box number 4, your tense suffix indicating action kind as well, the sigma alpha. No box 5 and number 6, box number 6, your inflection are your secondary endings. A reminder, one of those keys by Stevens, that the Greek aorist tense is the third principal part. Then a reminder that some of the tense stems will look a little bit different. Once again, we see the present tense for baptizo, and we notice that the aorist form actually is baptite, so we suspect a hidden stem there. So the first aorist builds off it right here by adding an augment and by adding a sigma alpha at the end. And we'll make some further observations in a minute here. Now remember, we are dealing with augments again, so we must remember that compounds hide augments, and I sometimes still forget those as well. It's just easy to overlook those. In general, use of an augment signals past time, so it's a great indicator. First aorist stems are a lot like present stems. We just build on to it. Sometimes though they can look different. It could be because they have a hidden stem, like we saw with the future, like didux. So could be from didasco. You can encounter something there. They could have plain irregular stems, just like we have past tense with ed and some without. Those are called second aorist. That's the other part of the third principal part, and we will see this in chapter 17. No thematic vowel, because the alpha of the sigma alpha kind of takes over that role. We're still outside the principal part, so if you encounter contracted verbs, they will lengthen. Now, inflection, the aorist tense is an historical tense, so that will play a role in our translation endeavors. In general, we will use the secondary endings, and that's important because we both know the tense and must be warned about some peculiarities there. So here you see the first aorist active indicative. We use luo, so we add the augment, a simple augment. You see lu, and then you see the sigma alpha added. But please note that the first person singular does not have the nu like you saw it for the imperfect, and that's particular for the aorist. It drops that nu, that liquid that's kind of nasty there, and you will see the sigma alpha exposed. So watch out, because there will be times where you would think that this is some sort of noun that's in the accusative or something. Okay, but you'll get used to it. Here's the middle, same thing. You add your augment, you build on it with your sigma alpha and then your endings. And notice that for the second person singular, it shortens in with the so there. Okay, main so do, so you get sigma omega there. We have nuances like we saw with the imperfect. Of course, we have an undefined action as action kind, just like with the future. And when we translate, though, we recognize different nuances. The ingressive and the culminative. Ingressive emphasizing the beginning of an action, and culminative the completion of an action. So for the culminative, here the example of I have baptized you with water. We also have a dramatic, for example, where we would bring it out as a present, historical present. Babylon is fallen, fallen is Babylon. You would really see a past tense there, an aorist for the Greek. Fell is Babylon, but we would bring it into the present tense for heightening the sense of drama. We also have an epistolary aorist, where the Greek again would use the past tense, like in the beginning of the Gospel of John, or no, the letters of John. I wrote to you, my little children, John says in his letters. The Greek would use that. We would say, I have written, or I am writing you, actually. So let's, oh, here you go. I'm writing you, or I'm writing to you. Grapsa umin. Let me see, I need new glasses. It's human, right? Yeah, I can see the reading mark. There you go, human. So we have middle deponents, just like you saw in the future. So keep an eye on maintaining that active voice there. And then some questions here. Of course, the aorist tense is third. It's undefined action. It has its own tense suffix. Sometimes the alpha can take on that role of a thematic vowel, and the contact verbs lengthen. And then, of course, we have to pay attention to the augment and lengthen that. Keep an eye on the parts. And do three things, right? We have to look at the augment. We have to see if it lengthens, if it's like here, if it's a contract verb. And then we have to put the inflection on it, or if it's a consonant verb of the stops, we will have to recognize stop interactions. All right, I'm sure you can take care of this.